right. I hope you can hear me well, perfectly.
Yes, I can.
All right, all right. So, welcome to the show. It's been a while, man. We haven't talked since was it when? Is it 2022? I guess.
I think a little bit before that.
A little bit before that. Oh my God,
Yeah,
it's been quite some
it's been some
time.
time. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
been some
pleasure
time.
to be here. Too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm really glad to have you on the show. So, tell me, how have you been? Tell me what's going
Uh,
on.
well, first of all, it's a pleasure. Thank you for thinking about me and for inviting me to this lovely podcast. It's really an incredible platform for us to how I'm thinking about this. I think it's a very great platform for refugees to reflect about how far they've come and what role the international community have played for them to become who they are and so on. And it is a very great pleasure for me to come to this platform. And thank you for having thoughts about me and inviting me here. I've been well. To respond to your question, I've been well. I've been doing a lot. A lot has happened since we spoke. So, but I
Yeah,
think I think I've done a lot of things, and but most all in all, I could say that I've been really doing great. I've been progressing. I've been growing as a person. I've been growing as a professional, and I'm proud of how far I've come and how far and how I'm standing right now. Yeah.
yeah, definitely, definitely. I think for the people who might be thinking who is this guy on these podcasts, his name is Jackson Byiringiro. He's a friend, actually, a friend of mine, and we met in 2018 where we started the Kepler program in Kigali doing our undergrad. He's a refugee in Rwanda, and surprising enough, he's now working with refugees. It's actually um, um I like the job you're doing. The fact that you are a refugee yourself, but also you're working with refugees. That says something actually. And then I would love to explore more. How did you end up in the position you're having now at Kepler?
Yeah, I feel like that is a very short story actually because like you said, we go very far in life, as far as 2018, and when we got at Kepler, I hope you remember I've been participating in different things which was related to supporting refugee students to to inclusively live in Kepler community at campus studies and so on. And doing all of that, I even ended up becoming a representative of the students with refugee statuses. And I say back then it was just refugees on for scholarship. Now
Hmm.
it's more than that. But I could say that I was a representative of the refugee community in Kepler as a student. And later on, I got to realize how much I enjoy doing any task related to the refugees. It was, to me, as a student representative, whenever I received a task from my direct supervisor, I felt like it was more than just a task from my
Hmm.
supervisor. It was more like a responsibility that I have towards my fellow refugees from the refugee camps. And so I started enjoying the work there. I started enjoying the work that I did with refugees. I started feeling like this could be my passion. I could be passionate about humanitarian work, which felt like a safe space for me. It felt like a safe
Hmm.
space. I was, it feels really great. I feel like maybe you shall experience this at some point, but it feels really great to see refugees coming and going differently from the way they came, like refugees coming from the refugee camps and joining a university program and leaving fully professionals and transitioning to a very good job. the level, the sense of accomplishment becomes really great. And for me, I could see that. I could see the way my supervisor enjoyed that, and I always wondered how would it feel for me if I'm enjoying these small tasks as a student
Mm-hmm.
representative, now as a person, as a full-time employee of Kepler, contributing to the success of refugees. How would it feel for me? And I said, I'm deciding to pursue the humanitarian sector. And whenever any application came out, I probably was among the first people to apply, to submit, to send in an
Yeah, yeah.
application. And later on, there was this position published, and immediately, without hesitations, I had to apply for it. And I joined Kepler as a staff now, doing after a little bit after COVID-19. It was in
Mm-hmm.
2021. After after a couple of internships, after I've had a couple of full-time jobs, but which really couldn't be related to the job that I was taking over from Kepler. I
Mm-hmm.
was more connected to this job more than any other of the previous jobs or previous internships that I've had, and so that is how I ended up here. I ended up doing something that I've always wanted to do, doing something that is way too bigger than just a job to me. It,
Mm-hmm.
it feels like a calling. It feels like, a responsibility, of having your young brothers. I sometimes call them my young brothers. I know it's not allowed in a professional setting, and it's probably not a good thing to do as a professional, as a staff of an organization. But for me, I feel like they're my young brothers, and I could see how they come and transition and become men, and I enjoy seeing a refugee grow to a good level. And that is what drives me even up to this day in my current role at Kepler.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a very satisfying job. I can imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because when I try to remember when we came at Kepler in 2018 in September, I remember I've been checking the pictures and recalling the things we've done. And after 2 3 years, I'm like, I'm a different person. I can now apply for jobs. I can handle interviews. I can have responsibilities. And before coming to Kepler, I couldn't do that. I didn't have the
Yeah.
confidence for sure. I was like, okay, I'm a refugee. I live in a refugee camp. My life doesn't matter at all. So I'm nothing. But I would say the Kepler program is one of the very successful program life-changing programs for refugees. I would say for now, for sure. I still give credit to Kepler to wherever I do now, because 99% of the skills I have now, the foundation came from Kepler, the refugee support, the program I was doing. It's an amazing, and it's a great story to hear from you as a refugee as well, as a friend. We work together, and I look at what you're doing, and it's incredible. For a young refugee to break the chain and be a man, grow up, get a job. It's not easy to find a job in Rwanda
Absolutely.
or in any sub-Saharan Africa country. So it's not easy. But I managed to get a job, and you managed to get one yourself. So it was a life-changing program for sure. I really appreciated the support they were doing. Anyways, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask, before you were working as a refugee counselor at Kepler, I imagine was more or less supporting refugees, giving some advice, and reaching out if they have problems or things they want qualifications to. But I wanted to go further. I wanted to go further.
Yeah.
How did you see the program or the job you were doing helping refugees in their personal lives, not in a professional way, but in their daily life or professional life, personal life?
I think like that is a good question. Now, The job absolutely goes beyond just academic success, and it goes above just professional success, but growth as a person, as an individual. And my law doing that, I wouldn't really say as there's a specific law or something on the job description that says supporting people's personal lives or so, but you could see I think growth of a person as a professional, as an intellect, it goes with personal growth as well. So seeing refugees, mostly refugees, among other people, have the utmost challenges that can ever exist in this world, and refugees in Rwanda are no different. So this is a very different group of individuals in a very large community, and this uniqueness of refugees comes with 1,000 issues, 1,000 challenges when they come in a totally different setting. Let me give you an example. Like I think I will have to be basing on the responses that I give to my and your experience as students, as refugee students joining. So when we joined Kepler, you could see I'll give you a quick brief of how I was when I before joining Kepler. I was a very confident person in our refugee camp, and I feel like that is what it takes for you to be admitted at Kepler. You have to be good at some point.
Yes.
You have to be good before getting admitted. I was very confident. I was very energetic, and I was smart in school. And this is just me talking about me, but I know this is a shared story to you and to more other
Yeah,
refugees
yeah.
that we got admitted together. And when you come with such level of understanding of yourself, like in my refugee community, I'm good. I'm someone who's looked up by some of young people. They want to have an outstanding performance from high school as I did. They want to be able to communicate as I did when I joined Kepler. But now, having that understanding of yourself before you join Kepler, and now getting to Kepler and realizing that you actually are very below, like you have nothing, you know nothing,
Yeah, yeah.
it becomes a completely challenging environment, because you are in a setting, you're in a setting where people have a total different background from you. People have had a better education than you. People have relatives who probably are promising their future, who guarantees their future outcomes than you. People have good English than you. They're able to communicate than you. They are better than you in every ways. Now this becomes very intimidating, and
Yes.
this becomes very intimidating to the level that it is going to affect your academic performance. It's going to affect your confidence in this new community. It's going to definitely destroy you in different ways. So that is where my job comes in as a guidance counselor, right?
Yeah, your
So
confidence get crushed
within
down for sure.
it gets crushed down. Like you're very confident initially, you feel like I'm good, and now I'm going to be good, better, in this new environment that I come in. But you get in a room and you feel like I'm the dumbest person in this room, like room
Oh my
full of
god.
people. I'm unfortunately, the slowest learner, because you're not necessarily a slow learner as you feel, but you're being intimidated by the person sitting next to you because they have this very good English. They have these very well aligned ideas. They have a very great way of speaking, and everyone, when they speak, you see a totally different person. But
Yes.
when you try to compare yourself to them, now you feel like, now I understand where I'm coming from as a refugee, right? So that kind of feeling is something that can totally affect your overall growth as a refugee who's just joined a community that is totally different from the community that they're used to. And So that is where the job comes in of the refugee guidance counselor,
Yeah. It's I think
because I
the job
have,
also
yeah,
is the job is more or less like, I have been a refugee and I've been there. So relax. I've been there and now here I
absolutely.
am.
You will do it. You will be fine. You will be
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fine when you feel like now everyone is very intimidating. I'm intimidated by everything that they do. I'm suddenly, having shortcomings in every corner of my life here at campus. And now you come to me, and then we sit down and talk. I'll just say, be easy on yourself. Just give yourself time to learn and grow, and then you will see how you eventually become. So that is, because you asked on the personal level, or outside of academic progress or professional life. That is how it's that now supporting people to be
Mm-hmm.
confident personally, to understand that they can do it on a personal pace, on a personal understanding of strengths, and the layers of self-esteem among the refugee students. That is where you support self or personal growth for refugees, other than additional work that you do for them to make sure that they're succeeding academically. Again, this is a very challenging environment for academically, so they have to also face academic related challenges, which
Yeah.
again you get to solve as a refugee guidance counselor. And now when it comes to the transition stage, again, there's another whole journey of which is a mystery that you have to figure out how they have to cope with it.
Mm-hmm.
So your job keeps on going until people are fully able to stand on their own, and now
Yeah,
you hand
yeah,
it
yeah.
over, yeah, to them. Yeah,
Yeah, all right. It's an incredible thing because most of the people don't understand the life in a refugee camp. So they
they
think, oh,
don't.
I see on the news and this is how it is, and it doesn't look so bad. It's bearable, but actually, it's unbearable. The life is so hard, and people there, when you said you were confident, okay, in your community you were okay, I'm among the top 1% or 10% in a refugee camp, but the standards are low. Standards are very low, in a way that when you go out and you meet other people and they know you're like, no, I'm actually below average, or I'm even average.
Really,
So
that's when you realize.
your confidence get crushed down, while you always had this idea in your mind, oh, I'm good, I'm the best. But it's actually a way of showing you're good, you're fine, but you can be better. You can be better. I had
Absolutely.
this episode in when I was sharing my story as a refugee. The title, I liked it so much. It was called "Thinking Outside the Map." So when you are a refugee, obviously we always hear the idea, oh, try to think outside the box. Yes, totally fine, and it's a great idea. You can think outside the box, but if you can try to think outside the map, so you'll be like, okay, fine, I've been able to think outside my box, my room, my tent, where you live. That's the box I've been able to think about. To think beyond that, I went to school, but I still think inside this map, this refugee camp, this little village, real place with a lot of people, different behaviors and upbringing. So you can think outside the box, but still you continue thinking inside the map. But if you can try to think outside the map, you will transcend everything you made in this life journey as a refugee, which is a challenging one. I one of them. I've been there, so it's really challenging. Jackson, why don't you tell us your story? Why don't you tell us your story as being a refugee? I can understand. I I have no idea of when you came to Rwanda. How old were you? I would love to know the story actually, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I don't. I definitely don't. I've opened up my life to the world, and I'm now an open book. Everyone knows so much about me, about my personal life. and I'm totally fine with that because I believe that refugees have very unique stories to tell, and the world should be should open and their ears and listen and try to relate to the stories of refugees. So that is why I tell my story. And for me, I have been a refugee for over a decade now. Because I got to be in the first transit center in Rwanda in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another attachment part of my story. First of all, before I be a transporter refugee, I was an internally displaced
Yeah. Within your
refugee in
country,
DRC, within my
DRC.
country. That
Mm-hmm.
is in 2009, 8, where I had to flee from my hometown and go and live in more considerably safe town.
Mm-hmm.
And now I had to stay in a totally different place than my home, and we were refugee inside, so inside our own country, and it's very hard for someone to be a refugee, to be called a refugee inside their own country, which is it's actually very harder than being a transporter refugee, because you are in
Yeah.
your own country and everyone is seeing you as a refugee. You are in a very low sheltered place, and
Yeah.
you relying on humanitarian aid. But I will not really stick to that story because I was really a very young person. I was really very little, and I can't recall so much of
Mm-hmm.
that. But now being a transporter refugee in 2012, crossing the border of DRC and fleeing to Rwanda, it was a nightmare, if I may say, in one word.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah. Yeah.
truly, there's no one, there's no situation, and there's never a moment or a life that can prepare you for the
For
life
that. No,
that
no,
you
no, no.
experience in a refugee camp. You can never be prepared for that. You can
No,
never.
no. And the cherry on top, nobody likes to leave home. No. Nobody.
Absolutely, no one, no one. That is actually when when you get in such kind of situations. That is when you realize how important to have a place to call home. We often neglect that feeling
Mm-hmm.
of having a sense of belonging somewhere. And when you get in a totally different place than where you used to, where you are now received by UNHCR or any other UN agencies, and that is when you realize now, wow, it's serious. I've become a refugee.
Yes.
Now in 2012, I was in a very similar situation, and I was 14 by then, 14, 15,
14,
and
15. Yeah.
which
Very
makes
young.
me yeah, I was young, but not so young again to understand what is going on. I could see the life changing. Like we are in a transit center in refugee camp in Camera, where we have like 2 square meters room to live in as a family of
Yeah.
7, which
Yeah.
you understand that how hard that is. It's myself, my mother, my father, my 5 younger siblings, and we are all staying like in a 2 square meter room where like we
Yeah.
have to fit in there, otherwise we stay outside all the time. So
Yes.
just having a blanket from the UNHCR, you just having one, like everything has to be one blanket,
One blanket,
one
one
blanket,
cup, one plate,
one cup, one plate, one
one
spoon,
saucepan.
one saucepan. It's very hard, and you have this shared kitchen where you have to go and cook your own food
Yeah.
for like 10 of 30 minutes, and then once you uplift your food, then there's someone else who's going to use the same kitchen.
The
Like
same
everyone
kitchen.
is
Yeah.
lined up waiting to use the kitchen, and sometimes they could give us beans which were very hard to to to
To to
to,
to
to,
cook.
to
And you know
cook, and
what?
can't
You know
cook
what,
really.
Jackson?
And
The
yes.
funny story is, Most of the time, people see and hear the news. Oh, UNHCR is supporting refugees in this refugee camp, let's say Mahama camp or wherever, and they're like, oh yeah, at least they are getting support. No, it's below minimum, the minimum required for somebody to survive. Imagine one spoon, one plate for 5 people, 10. It's called support, yes, it's support, but it's below minimum for sure. Yeah. Sorry to
It's
interrupt.
totally below minimum. It's all right. It's that is very true. It's very below minimum. But again, I mean, to some extent, now that I'm working in this kind of context of humanitarian work, I totally understand somewhere where this comes from. But um, when back then I couldn't understand. Now I'm grown up enough to understand why the minimum, why very less things. It's probably because of the number of refugees which are living, which are very vulnerable to support. And this is an emergency situation, so we just give you guys something that you can use temporarily. But it was definitely seen as a temporary situation, and for me, in my understanding, I could sometimes even, see myself and my young brother, because he was the one that we shared, uh, a feeling. The
Mm-hmm.
rest were really young and they couldn't understand what was going on. But when it could be time for sleeping, and I could see myself sleeping next to my mom, my father, like everyone is sleeping
Everybody
just like that down, and was like,
on the floor.
oh,
Yeah.
this life, huh? This is going to be very hard. And I was waiting for a moment where this is going to change and we go back to the normal life, because I wasn't feeling like this is a life that I can live for over a decade now. Now
Yeah.
that I've
Yeah.
been living as a refugee for
Yeah.
over a decade, and now in that transit center, we were going under some sort of census and registering I mean, to be in the database of the United Nations as well as the country of Rwanda. Thanks to them, that
Mm-hmm.
we're having safety, but unfortunately, we were missing a lot of things. We were safe, yes. I'm
Yes.
very thankful for that, but there was a lot of things which were missing, and what was actually missing the most, and I mostly say this, is what I get to realize when I reached into the Kigeme refugee camp, because we stayed there for over 4 months. And then
Mm-hmm.
after 4 months, we transferred now to a refugee camp where we had to receive a 2 bedrooms house, a very small house
Mm-hmm.
indeed. And that was comparatively a better situation, right? And so when we reached there, it was like when we hopped into a car, the UNHCR's big truck going to the Kigeme refugee
Oh my
camp. I
gosh.
was
I know.
expecting something very different. I was like, now that probably they're taking us now, we're going to have a life. We're going to be, they're going to give you a house, they give you a plot of land, and then you can go back to your old life. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, this was a totally different story. Like what was waiting for us on the other side was almost similar to what we were living out of in Camera Transit Center. And
And the
when we
transit
got
center. Yeah.
there, yeah, in the transit center. So when we got there, we stayed for like a month, with me really expecting a change anytime, because in my mind I had like, this is not a life that someone could live in,
I
so I was
yes.
expecting something different, something improved, something better, something bigger than what we had, always something better. But unfortunately, however long I waited for this, it never came. So I had to make peace with what I had,
I share
you
the
know
same feeling. I know. I know.
Usually, absolutely. I feel like this is a story not particularly for me. It's a story for 1,000 other refugees living, or who have lived at least in in any of the refugee camps all around the world. And for us now in the refugee camp, it was like, there has to be something to improve. There has to be something. The most significant damage that this situation gives to a person is the moral damage or the psychological damage which comes to the people who are in their transition stage. You know, this is where actually the situation of being a refugee becomes very intense. Not after
Hmm.
5 years. Now you're used to the life. Now
Yeah.
it's become a common thing and it's become a simple thing. You can bear anything. But the initial stage is the transition from your old life in your old country to the life of a refugee who has embraced it, who understands the situation, and who have made peace with the situation and is calm now, and they are focused on whatever is their focus. The damage becomes severe in the initial stages. And I'm saying this because for me, after like 1 month to 3 months of waiting for something different and never getting it, I was like, now this is probably the life that I'm going to live. But I couldn't
Yeah.
really understand. I couldn't really
Yeah.
understand why I should be living that life, right? In some instances, I could come up with some excuses to my mom, and my father could say, now I'm not going to study in English, so I have to go back to DRC in the French system. So that is an excuse for me to leave the camp. And
Oh my God.
the
Yeah.
parents can't allow that because it's not safe for you. Even the UNHCR can't allow that. The government of Rwanda cannot allow that. It's not a safe environment. I'm not even old enough to make that kind of a decision.
Yes. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
have to
I
stay. I
know.
could come up with a lot of excuses just because I couldn't see how I'm going to live that life for 10 years.
10 years.
I
Yeah.
couldn't
And
see, yeah, I couldn't
of course you
see
were
anybody
14,
living that kind
15.
of life. Yes.
And probably you were like, no, I don't like this life, so I would rather go back there, and maybe I don't know what will happen to me, but I don't like the idea of living this life. And but for now, I
Absolutely.
we made peace with it. It's fine, and that's why we can talk about it now freely. When we came in Rwanda, when I was there in Rwanda in 2015,
Yeah.
myself, I was like, no, this is going to last only for 2 weeks, then I go back. That was the idea in my head. Because
Yeah.
why? I was like, this is not a life that somebody can live for even 3 months. So the
Yeah.
situation is going to be settled down in 2 months or 2 weeks, and then we go back. But yeah, I'm still waiting for the situation to settle down. It's been 9 now. 9 years. Oh my gosh.
It's funny how some bad situations can really be laughed as good ones, but I'm very sure that most refugees who are just fleeing their countries, they feel like this is a temporary thing, which is
Yeah.
very very sad to see, because they don't see how they're going to live the life that they live for over 28 years. Kiziba
28
in
and
Kiziba refugee camp, which has been there since 1990 something, and now a person who was born from that kind of situation is 28 years old or 27 years old, and it's very funny how their parents got into a refugee camp thinking that it's just a temporary situation and we'll leave
yes,
this place as soon as we can, and everyone
as
is
soon as we
like,
can.
yeah, yeah. So I think that I've even mentioned it in some of the articles that I've written. Some of the things which mostly misses in the transition stage for refugees is the psychosocial support for people to embrace the life, or to be able to go through the life that they are going through as refugees in their transition stage. I'm saying this because of what? I have two stories of people whom we got together in the refugee camps, and I've seen how the hardships to transition from their old life to this new refugee life have influenced some of the decisions that they took, which had which has permanently impacted their overall life currently. I'm saying this because in some instances, young people who were a little bit older than me, 16, 17 years back then, they could go back in Congo, not in the form of repatriation, just joining the military labels. You know why?
Hmm.
It's because they are not ready for the life that they're having there, and then they don't feel like they can stay there for a given period of time, which is longer than what they had spent there already. And now they find excuses and they call it patriotism and whatever.
Yeah.
They say we're going to fight for
Yeah.
our country, but in reality, they're actually not able to cope with the situations that they are finding in the refugee camps. That is one
Yeah.
example. Another one, so you imagine like someone who was 16 years old or 17 years old back then, who went to the military, any militia groups in DRC just because they were not able to bear the life that they were facing in the refugee camps. And now they went there and probably got killed. They were
Hmm.
minority, they are child
Yeah.
soldiers. That is totally against human rights. And
Yeah.
some of the causes, it's very sad to see that some of the causes which leads to actually lack of respect to human rights is actually driven by some of the people who are supposed to be, creating a safe environment for people who are likely to face the human rights crisis, right?
Yeah.
So some young people who could go through drug abuse because they are not able to cope with the hardships or the life that they are facing in the refugee camps. I have very some varied stories. I'm sorry, I'm not going to say names on your podcast on your platform, but these are people who I know we grew up together in the refugee camp. So they could go in the militia group and spend like 3 2 years and then come back totally different, totally damaged,
Yes. Damaged. Yeah.
having a high level of consumption of alcohol, having a high level of consumption of drugs, and their minds is not right. They're not able to, to have this new life and make the most out of it,
Yeah.
and I totally understand them because I couldn't say these are weak people. I will not
No,
say
no.
that because like someone could say like if Jackson, if Jean Dodier, you can go through it, then anybody could go through it. But trust me, we have totally different coping mechanisms as people, and we could be in a very similar situation and reactions could be totally different, and the way that we cope with some similar things happening to us could be totally different. We've seen a number of girls engaging themselves in prostitution because they couldn't be able to get basic needs in the refugee camp, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
they engage themselves in sex life, get to because simply there's a man who's telling them, I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you this, right? So these are
yeah.
the things, these are still gaps which are in the transition stage when people are supporting refugees coming in. I would say that psychosocial support for refugees who are in their transition stage is as important as the 1 liter of oil, of the cooking oil, of the 1 kilogram of salt, of the 5 kgs of beans, of whatever it is that you give and consider it basic need. Psychosocial support is equally important to all of those things for refugees in their transition stage. I'm saying this from personal experience. I'm very sure that
Yeah.
you can
No,
relate and talk more about
look,
that as well.
it's it's almost the similar stories. Remember in 2015, I was there, and some young guys were like, "No, I can't survive this," and they started doing the same thing, joining the militia and everything. But it's very unfortunate that most of them they never came back. Many of
Right?
them died.
They
Those
die.
who were able to survive, they are totally different person. They can't go back
They're
to school.
damaged.
They are done
Yes.
in a way that they've been through hell. Let's say, imagine a
Absolutely.
16-year-old, 20-year-old carrying a gun, shooting, being shot at, seeing dead bodies all the time,
Yeah.
every day and everywhere. That's very damaging,
They
and
can't go over that.
uh, no, they can't. However much you strong you are, you can't cope with that. It's a very strange
No,
situation
can
to
never.
be in, and similar things happened. So, but the psychosocial support you talked about, I think it's very important because it's connected to the education. Most of the support you and Ashera and other partners give is material support, but it's very needed for sure. We need clean water, we need food, we need all those things to use. But those are things you're giving people that you will have to give them those things today, tomorrow, after tomorrow, and after 10 years, because they'll be receiving things. But if you try to go on another side of the story and say, how can I best support these people? It will be through that psychosocial support and also education. So people will understand, look, I might be able to give you this, but maybe I won't be able to give you this for a longer period of time. So why don't you try to find your own way and see how you can cope with the situation? You're still young, go to school, do this and do that, so you can be able to make it on your own. But unfortunately, nobody's interested in your story and telling you that we have rules and regulations to follow. We have things to give to people, and that's it. And we don't care
Yeah, yeah,
on the other side of the best supporting you, which is why I always say one of the best thing that can happen to a refugee is leave a refugee camp, go outside, go to school, meet other different people with a different mindset and a different way of looking at life. And from there, that's what happened at Kepler Ashley. We went there,
yeah,
we met other
yeah.
people, and then we tried to qualify ourselves. We 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 earned our degrees, we get jobs and everything. That was like a qualifying mechanism for us, but also developing another point of view on life. I don't know what to say about the support being given to refugees. I don't know if I'm going to say it's not enough or it's not a an appropriate way of supporting refugees, but I understand it's very complicated to support thousands of people that just arrived in a matter of seconds. So it's very demanding. What do you make? What do you make on the support of you and Ashera and the other partners on refugees, Jackson?
I absolutely think that the UNHCR is doing a great job at supporting refugees because, again, these are situations which are not expected, and so they are acting in a very reactive way instead of proactive. There could
Hmm.
never be proactivity
Yeah, yeah,
on a humanitarian crisis, which makes it very complicated for the UNHCR and other international organizations. But I feel like the resources available or dedicated to supporting refugees, they should be it should be being allocated, effectively or in ways that really matters,
hundred
and
percent.
which that
Yeah,
yeah that really impact refugees overall living. Again, I don't feel like it's very it makes a lot of sense if there is no one who's supporting refugees emotionally to go through the transition stage. I feel like if that is a point that can be left out in any conversation, then that is not the right conversation to have, right? So I think that UNHCR is doing a lot of things, and some of the things which should be highly a focus for UNHCR, United Nations agencies, or any other international organizations involved in supporting refugees. It should be, given education should be given a priority in all. Like you said, refugees, or if I may put in this perspective, education is the only way out for refugees, if I may say.
I
So I normally
subscribe to
say
the
that
idea. Yeah, yeah,
I mostly say that a refugee could have security. They could feel safe. They could. We are in Rwanda. We are safe, but there's there's a whole lot of things which needs to be done for us to feel like we are valued as people. That is one, and we are heard on a global, we are included in global conversations, or our voices are heard, and this can never be done if there is no education for refugees. And I'm saying education in terms of you know nursery, primary, secondary, and then higher education. I don't know if you know the numbers in Rwanda, but as we go up in education levels, the numbers actually get dropped. So the numbers goes down. So like the higher we go in terms of education level, the lower the numbers go. There's a like we would say that there's a thousands of people, of young children going into nursery schools, and then the number drops a little bit to hundreds going into primary education, and then it drops again going into ordinary level education, and then it drops again going into advanced level. And when it comes to higher education now, it's like there is no
It's a
one
different
going to.
story, yeah.
It's a
But
very different
also, I think,
story.
but also, it's
Yeah,
the higher education institutions are expensive. So, and
very
also
expensive.
scholarships are limited compared
Yeah,
to the secondary school education and the nursery levels. I can understand in my little understanding of the situation.
absolutely. So you could, I mean, those are the things that we tell ourselves. We say probably we've tried in this conversation. What I like the most is that we're trying to, we're speaking from the experience, but again we're trying to have an understanding of the global perspective, because if there is more than 100 million refugees, or probably a million refugees in need of emergency support or assistance, then resources definitely we have to be very short, and people probably not going to be able to meet the needs of refugees. But I feel like still it's worth still it's a conversation that is worth having, and points really worth raising, that education for refugees the only way out is the only way out. I feel like when we talk about durable solutions for refugee crisis or for humanitarian crisis, we talk about resettlement, which is a very small percentage. We talk about local integration, which is something that is supposed to be having a high chance and a very big percentage in terms of durable solutions. And we talk about repatriation, which not necessarily will be up to the refugees or the host community or the international organizations, but the country of origin. And so we should leave that aside from the conversations that we have
Okay.
as refugees or as international organizations, as host countries, but talk about some of the things that we actually have control over, right? So we shouldn't really say much about resettlement, because yes, the third countries are really willing to take in refugees, but that is a very small percentage. So if you could, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm very sure that
I have no
people in
idea as
charge
well.
of it, people in charge of this will highly have, some. We have to agree with what I'm saying. That is a very small percentage, so we shouldn't really rely on it as a solution. So we something that we have under control as international organization and as host countries is local integration. Now, why am I talking about local integration? Now, as a refugee, being integrated in a refugee in a host community without having any level of education, you even become a problem to the host community, right? You become
Yes.
a problem to the asylum country. You become a problem to the community. But if you've had an education, let me give you an example. I'm currently working in Rwanda. I'm paying taxes, workers' taxes. I'm being taxed, right? I'm
Yes.
I'm contributing to my retirement, to my pension. What? How the pension scheme? That
And
is
the
how it's
pension
called.
scheme. Yeah.
So I'm contributing to the pension scheme as other Rwandans are doing. Thanks to the government of Rwanda for giving us the right to work in Rwanda as refugees, and for allowing, being so kind to us, and opening doors for refugees to just uh, use their capacities and don't be regarded on their status. But I couldn't really be able to do all of this if I haven't gotten access to education. So education is a very important feature of local integration, is a very important feature of a durable solution, which is local integration. It's a very important
Hmm.
feature for the transition or the transformation of refugee situations, because now I'm at a stage of thinking that, if I can live anywhere in Rwanda, right? I'm able, because I
Yeah.
make money, I have a good job, and I can live in Kigali like the rest of the nationals do. I can live wherever I want in this country, and I'll be able to afford it. Uh, but this is not a story for every refugee in Rwanda, right?
No,
Because
it's unfortunately not. No.
unfortunately, it's not a refugee for all the, I mean, it's not a story for all the refugees in the country. And this is what makes the situation even worse, because people are expected to find their way out, to be included economically, to be included in education systems, to be included in the community or or the asylum country. But
Country.
the only facilitation, or the only facilitation that is possible is through education. So that is how important education is, to respond to your question. I feel like that should be the most focused way of using resources by the UNHCR or by the international community or any other organizations looking forward to support refugees. Education is,
Definitely.
yeah,
I think it should be given the priority number one for sure, because
absolutely.
that's what is going to drive the change in individuals' lives, determining where somebody's going to be in 10, 15 years from now. And also it's a way of supporting the 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 country of origin. Maybe 20 years or 30 years people will go back, let's say, but it will be very nice to go back in a different shape, in a different mindset.
Absolutely.
I have realized one of the the very difficult thing, and something that is holding people back, is the mindset. The mindset in a refugee camp, however much some of the international organizations try to support, give economic support to include the people in the economic system of the country, there is this mindset. People are used to receiving things. It's little things they receive, but they get used to receiving. So when you give things for them to try to get out of this life,
Yeah.
they tend to try their best, but the mindset keeps them down. It's very unfortunate. That's why I don't wish anybody to be a refugee, and I don't wish anybody to live that life in that refugee camp for long enough to change your mindset to be a different person. It's not a good idea. If we had a choice, I would say
Yeah.
no. Well, you know what happened in 2016?
Yeah.
We I left the camp. I went to a boarding school because when I left the country in 2015, I wasn't yet done with my secondary education. So I went to a boarding school in Rwanda. So with other Rwandan kids our age, doing my finishing my secondary school. I did 2 years, 16 and 17. What happened is that was the best thing that has ever happened to my life. Why? Because the life there was very hard. We didn't have firewood, we didn't have enough food. So I was young, growing up, but I didn't have enough to support myself in terms of food, water, shelter. But when I left the camp, so I spent 2 years in a boarding school. I didn't have to worry about anything. So I was
Yeah.
worried about my academics, my school materials, and I have been able to perform very well, very well. And what happened is when I went back after the 2 years, looking at my friends who stayed there 16, 17, those are very different person. Those are very different
Yeah.
people. They have a different mindset. They find life impossible for them. But I, for me, I brought like hope in them, because I will be like, no, it's still, there is still a way. Don't worry, we will find a way and make your life and get a job. Or but I encouraged them to go to school. I know it's very hard for you to find a boarding school as I did, but try to go to school, and trust me, you will spend there 6 hours, let's say. Those hours will be different from the hours you will spend in a refugee camp. When you come back in a refugee camp, you will be okay, this is the life, but I'm preparing my future at school. So it's when you leave the refugee camp, you go out, you see a different side of the life, and you prepare your future. It's the education, very important, as you said. It's the only key. Let me
It's the
say
only
that
way
it's the
out.
only key to the door of a way out. Jackson, you, that was last year. You were in Switzerland for
Yes.
for the world. What is it called? Global. It's a Global Refugee Forum
Yes.
2023 in Switzerland.
Yes.
I can imagine those were the people from all over the world, leaders of international organizations and corporations, and most of the diplomats there, convening to listen to refugee stories as first thing, and also exploring ways, sharing success stories, and talking about how can we best address the current refugee situation. I would like you to tackle two things. Do do people really understand the life of refugee in a refugee camp, let's say in most of the southern part of the world, the sub-saharan countries and other, let me say, poor countries, compared to the western world, of course. That's one. And what is the main theme, and why are people convening there to talk about refugees? Actually, as one of the person who are there, possibly sharing the story, and also try to contribute it to the design of the projects. Let me say.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I feel like there's a. It was actually a very great privilege. To be at the GRF in 2023 in Geneva, and for me it was just a great experience because I had to sit on a, on the table, if I may say, where people had a common goal, which was talk about refugee crisis on a global scale, and calling up people, or international organizations, individuals to contribute as they can to making sure that they're creating a safe space for refugees. At the same time, being raising awareness about the global situations, which is happening, what is happening, where is it happening, and what can be done by the international community, and what could be the contribution of each and every person. But what I could say again is I participated as a representative, as a refugee representative from Rwanda. So I was the only refugee coming from the country, from Rwanda, going to the GRF, and it was a very pleasure on me because I had to make sure that I'm raising the concerns or the issues that refugees are facing in Rwanda. I had to understand everything. So it was a lot of pressure, but a very great and honorable experience for me. So first of all, to start, I think maybe let me start with the second question, which is, and correct me if I'm wrong, which is why do we have to go there, or why the people have to convene in the same place uh, for like what is the global conversation, right? I
Yeah.
think I think it is actually a very great honor, and I have to give it to give the credit to the UNHCR and other organizations which are involved to prepare the Global Refugee Forum, because there's a very much needed meeting, there's a very much needed gathering, because there's 1,000 people coming and having a common goal. Like I said, is finding global solutions to the refugee crisis, to the humanitarian crisis which the world is facing. And this is where states, organizations come together and say, set a commitment towards helping refugees, right? For instance, if you followed everything that happened there, that is where we go to land. Rwanda, as a state, as a government, have committed to including refugees in the community-based health insurance, which is a very great thing. So that commitment means a lot. It means a lot, and for a country which did not make any sort of commitment, seeing Rwanda incorporating all refugees into into the community health based insurance CBHI program, which is I think you know it, which is Mutuelle de Santé mainly. This is allowing refugees to have free access to medical services in Rwanda, in the country. So this is
Hmm.
mainly a service that is allowed to nationals,
Yeah.
but now it's open to refugees. That is a very huge thing. That is a very big thing,
It's a
because
very huge thing,
eventually,
and I think I've seen
yeah,
it happening. Some of my friends were sending some messages. Yeah, it's happening, and I was like, wow.
it is happening. I've got a privilege to witness that preach coming to life, like face to face, and I can't relate anything. I can't say anything better to that kind of experience. And why now do people have to be there? I feel like it's a chance for other countries to learn from what other countries are doing to support refugees. That is one. Second, it is a shared space for people to learn about best practices which are considered to be on a global scale. So countries learn from other countries what they're doing to help refugees. Countries get to see the shortcomings of other countries, and they say like, this is something which could have been done better. And this is where actually even connections are made, international organizations connecting with each other so that they could support refugees. So it is a very great platform. Now on the refugee side, being there, why do they have to be there? It is actually the driven claim that I feel like we all share this. It says that a meeting about me without me is not, for me, right?
Yeah,
It could be,
yeah. It's
right?
something like if you're designing something for me without me, it means you're designing something against me. It's something sort of
Against
like
me,
that.
absolutely, which
Yeah.
is very true, right? That is so it's in the sense of meaningful participation. We are a good number of refugees representing. I feel like almost 300 refugees. Sorry,
Hmm.
300 refugees from all over the world. I feel like that is, it's not a big number. I have to say it's not a big number compared to the global refugees population, but I feel like it's a start. That we will get there. Eventually, we'll be leading the conversations about refugees ourselves, and we shall be able now to voice out our need as refugees. So I feel like for refugees participating there is, people want to hear your perspective about the support that you're given. It is they want to hear your perspective about the practices which are being done for your communities, which are being done for your people. You actually have to sit on the table of decision makers and see, what do they consider, because these are most every refugee who has a common sense, or who is educated enough to think about global policy, they sometimes ask themselves what they base on to make these kind of decisions, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because like I could see my fellow colleagues that we went to university or to college together, asking themselves, so why did UNHCR really cut off the support to
The
some
support.
people and leave it to some others, right? So those
Yeah.
are the kind of those are the kind of queries that you have if you didn't sit on the table of decision makers, right? But with a meaningful participation, or with the respect towards the saying of there is no meeting about me without me. So a meeting about me without me could be a meeting against me, or could be a meeting for me.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
you get to really see how people get to allocate resources in a very diverse way, because there's a lot of things which has to be done, unfortunately, to sustain refugees. And now it gives you an understanding. But then, most importantly, it gives the policymakers that you included yourself an insight of what could be a priority when it comes to supporting refugees, because you're coming with first-hand experience, you're coming with
Hmm.
lived experience, and so people will listen when you speak. They have to listen and consider your thoughts of the situations, to make sure that they are making decisions which are suitable for the refugees. And a question about whether people understand the life of refugees, my friend, it's a very hard one to understand, to respond to, because I think this life can only be understood by someone who has lived it. I
I
don't think
I
I don't think I
I
don't
can't
think
agree more on that. No, it's true. It's true.
I can't think of a better response to your question. I think there is no one in this world, and there is no any level of empathy that you need to have for you to understand the lives of refugees. Refugees life can only be understood from lived experience perspective.
Hmm.
But you can be close. I'll have to say that you can be close to understanding the refugee lives, if you are empathetic enough to step a mile, or an extra mile inside their shoes. Then you at least can get closer to their understanding of how their life is. Other than that, you can't understand really their lives, because now the Global Refugee Forum, not related to my response or your question to the Global Refugee Forum, as well as my response, is that is why there has to be a meaningful representation, because even the global community already believes that you can't have an understanding of refugee life unless you are a refugee yourself, or you have been a refugee yourself for some years. So that is why they want refugees to be present when these kind of decisions are made, because they're bringing the first-hand information. They're
Yeah.
saying, like, if this was done instead of this, then I could have been, better than the way I was at a given time of life when I was living in the refugee camp, right? So people relate to the refugee life, but they can never understand the refugee life. That is
No,
my
no, it's
personal opinion. And I'm not
no.
saying that people are not empathetic enough, but that is my personal opinion. I don't feel like you can ever understand the lives of refugees unless you have been or are a refugee yourself.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's true. It's true, 100%. I haven't said this in any of my podcast, but I have an experience which is a little different than yours. In a way that I lived in Rwanda as a refugee for a number of years. I've been able to finish my undergrad. I've been able to do A, B, C, D, and then now I would say I'm going through a different experience as also an asylum seeker in the Western world, in a way that the life in a refugee camp in the poor countries, let's say in the sub-Saharan African countries, is like you have to worry about everything. You have to worry about everything. Am I going to get enough food? Enough food today? Am I going to be able to find water today? Am I going actually to find medications? Am I all those questions, the basic needs, you have to
Yes.
struggle
Yes.
with them And obviously,
Mm,
it's and most of the people in the host community are struggling with the same thing. They
mm,
struggle with the same things because the
mm.
country is also struggling to meet the needs of the citizens, and in
Its
addition to
population.
refugees, yeah, the
Mm,
population, it's very difficult for a refugee. Also, it's the hardest part of the life. That's the life in sub-Saharan African refugee camps or refugee life. You have to struggle with everything. On a different note, on the other side, at least you safe,
yes.
you have enough to eat, and you sure when you get sick you will get medication,
Mm. And
and
you
you
have
don't
a
have to
home.
worry. Yeah, and you have a home, you have where to stay. You don't have to worry about the the basic needs at hand, let's say, at the moment. Well, obviously, as a refugee, it's almost the same. It's almost the same in a way. You have a place, you have a home, but of course you will have to live with other people. You will live with other people, but it's a much better place compared to the one in a refugee camp in
Mm.
Rwanda, let's say, or in Uganda, something like that. It's a very different thing. So which
It's
means
actually people confuse it. I'm sorry to cut you short, but I think that
sure.
people confuse poverty in some of the sub-Saharan countries. Uh, they confuse it to the lives of refugees. So lives of refugees is way below poverty line, if I may say.
Yes.
You can be poor, but have a place to call home, have a
Yeah.
government fighting for, for your uplift, have a government looking over you, have, policies supposed to protect you from a state, have a parliament thinking about your well-being, have
Hmm.
a president thinking about you in their responsibilities, which is totally different from the refugee situations. As a refugee, trust me, you are you and the international organizations, United agencies, trying to get the basics for you, just the basics for you.
The
It is
basics.
always
Yeah.
about the basics for you, and there is no one who has you in their own responsibilities. I think we are responsibilities of United Nations, but it is in their due right to say we did not get international support, and so this we have to change because you are a
Yes.
refugee. You're not, there's no one who owes you anything, right?
Yes. I say that.
Like I think
Nobody.
that I think that I think that the refugee life should be, we should be able to differentiate a bad life of a person who is not a refugee and a situation of a refugee. People could even say that you look good than this national or this person who is
Hmm.
having a country. But
Yeah.
trust me, if I had to trade the way I look with that person who has a country that accepts them, that has them under responsibilities, being able to call a Rwandan, a Burundian, a Kenyan, a Ugandan, other than a refugee. If I had to trade everything that I have for any of those things, then I'll have to do it because I understand that the refugee life is totally different from the confusion that most of the people have, thinking that a poor person, a poor national to any country can be compared to a refugee somewhere in the refugee camp. It's totally different. Refugees, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can be having money as a refugee, but you are totally different from a poor person who has a given sense of belonging to any country. And that leaves you most vulnerable to this person who is relatively poor or who's, comparatively having a bad life than you. But I feel like there's a very big difference from all of those things that I've just said, and people should be able to understand. We shouldn't really be in a position comparing that to the refugee situations. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm saying this why? Because, like you said, you went through a boarding school, right?
yes,
And there was probably a Rwandan national somewhere who was not able to go to a boarding school, right?
definitely, 100%.
But the government of Rwanda had 12 years basic education because they were thinking about that particular person and their responsibilities, right? You
Yeah,
going to that boarding school, it didn't change any. I mean, yes, it changed some things. It changed a couple of things, but it didn't change a lot about your overall situation, right? It changed some things. I agree with that. It changed some things, but it didn't change much. Actually, if you can go back and see, it didn't really change a lot of things compared to a national who was in the same boarding school, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
having had the chance, having had a chance of going there, like me relating to my story in the high school, I performed really great at the ordinary level, and I got assigned to a good school, but I couldn't go to this school. Why? Because I was not, first of all, able to go there at my own. My parents weren't able to sponsor my education there. Uh, and I didn't have any sponsor. And so there was no government thinking about me, right? And that is why
No,
I didn't go there, right?
yes, yeah, yeah,
For a national who is in the same situation, there's a government thinking about it. There's a parliament, a room full of men
yeah,
dedicated to find solutions to the
yeah.
challenges that this
Men,
person is
women
facing,
thinking
right?
about you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thinking about you. As a refugee, you have nobody thinking about you. Like, international organizations are there. Yes, United Nations agencies are fighting for you to have, the basic rights as a person, to have a shelter, to have this, to have this, to have this. But trust me, these are things that not any of these international organizations actually owe you.
But definitely,
Then,
yeah. But I used to say that. Sorry to cut you short. It's
no, no.
I usually used to tell my friends, look, however much you complain about the support of UNHCR or the government of Rwanda or whoever supporting you, no one is owing you anything for sure. Nobody's owing you. None. None. So you have to figure out on your own. And the story you've just told, it's a perspective I think many people need to understand about the life of a refugee. Nobody's thinking about
Absolutely.
you. No, nobody's. Who cares? No one cares. In a way that it doesn't mean people don't care or international organization. I know they are doing a great job supporting refugees all over the planet. But your future and other plans, it's you. And the same thing happened to me as well. I performed really well in my secondary education. I wanted to go and do computer science. I was ready to do my 4 year period in computer science. But you know what happened? I had a good grades, so I needed to find a program, a university program. I was okay in a good position to find a computer science program in Rwanda. But guess what? First of all, I was relying on two things: scholarship, and those two scholarships were one from the Kepler program and another one from the Duffy. I think Duffy.
Daffy, yeah.
I don't know if it's the German program or whatever supporting refugees higher education. So I am a very open-minded guy, as you know me. I was like, okay,
Yeah, I know.
I can't pay for myself, and I'm unable to find a sponsor to sponsor my education. So what am I going to do? Cool. Keep my mind open. Whatever comes first, I go with that.
Yeah.
So the Kepler program came. I applied. I did the interviews, all those tests, the screening,
Yeah,
and I
the tough process.
yes, the tough. Yeah, I passed it. I got a place at Kepler. I was like, yes, maybe that's where I was meant to be. So I had this idea in my mind. I like the computer science thing. So I say I want to go there and then be a computer engineer or do great things for
Yeah.
me and for maybe for my country. The country is struggling, maybe who knows, 20 or 30 years. But I couldn't. But good enough, I find the Kepler scholarship to do my undergrad at the Southern New Hampshire University program, and I'm very grateful. I've been able to make something out of myself. Let me say, but the
Yeah.
thing is, no one is there to save you, let's say. So I had to find my ways. That was the situation analysis I did when I was in high school. I said, well, I know, what do I have in control? I know I need to leave this a refugee camp. This life is not for me. I have to leave this place. How? Scholarship and a job. What do I have in control? Job, no. Scholarship, yes, partially
No.
in a way. I get really, really good grades. Whether it's only one scholarship or two, it will be mine. So I worked really hard, and uh, I
Yeah.
get good grades, even though I couldn't go to the computer science program, but I was able to get a scholarship into a management program, which I'm very grateful for. So the story you've just told the world, it's something that people maybe don't have an idea about. I'm a
They
refugee,
don't.
I'm being supported, but it's a minimum. It's nothing talking about the future. No, it's now. So the future is, it's me. Now I have to figure out everything on my own. No family member, nobody. It's just me. So that's the hardest part of the story of being a refugee, for sure. That I'm glad you brought up the perspective on understanding the
Absolutely.
difference between being a refugee in a poor country and being a poor national of that country, or being a rich in a asylum country, or being a rich in a home country. And also
Yes.
we were lucky in Rwanda. The people, or no one would harass you or do whatever,
Yeah.
because the government was really strict. But guess what? Do you know what happened in other places? It's very strange. You do your great job, you work really hard, you get some things, you own things, and then people steal from you, and you don't have anyone to go and tell,
To go to.
look, the people are stealing me, they are getting my own stuff. They're like, go to hell
They
on your
could. They,
idea.
and and probably could say I don't. It's people shouldn't understand that it's not like stealing. Like probably being in a situation where someone took your things. On a on a hidden practice. It's like
Yeah,
like taking your things because they feel like you are not a country, you're not national, you're not a member of their country, and so you shouldn't really be making much money than what they're
yeah,
making. You shouldn't really make a life than better than the life that they have because you are a
yeah. It's
refugee. So
yeah.
they
It's more
consider it
like you
like
don't deserve
xenophobia.
that.
Yes,
Yeah,
you don't
something like
deserve
that.
that. You don't
You don't
deserve our
deserve that.
jobs. You don't deserve our income. You don't deserve any of these things. And the government that sees that through, and they just don't do anything. The government of Rwanda is a very good government, and we are very very lucky because they've given us a home, if I may say. Away from our homes, and they accepted us. The policies are very inclusive, and it allows the refugees to make their own living in their
Yeah,
country. They allows refugees to work, but we should also think about the countries where this is not allowed, right? Because there are some countries where these refugees are not allowed to work.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Let on work it. Like I've been able to travel outside of the country, outside of Rwanda, because the government of Rwanda has respected. I'm sorry, excuse me, has respected the convention right and accepted over the travel convention documents,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
convention travel document, the CTDs to the refugees. So that is one thing. You know, there's a refugee somewhere in countries that I do not want to say for the safety of your platform.
definitely.
Uh, that refugees are not allowed to travel outside of the country,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
something
yeah,
that makes them stay totally behind from other refugees all over the world, or from even the population of their host communities. So you
yeah,
understand that in some countries where they practice policies which are not inclusive enough for refugees, which are not safe for refugees, then there's still a long way to go. There's still a very long conversation to have on a global platforms, and I think that international organizations should be able, or international community in general should be able to understand refugees in their contextualized situations, because when you
hmm
talk about a refugee in the western country, it's a totally different story
No,
from
no,
a refugee.
it's a different story. It's a different story for sure. I
Absolutely,
have
you
something to
could
talk about that.
understand.
Yeah, I when I traveled
Right. Actually, you
from
are the right
Rwanda.
person because you've been a refugee in Rwanda, now an asylum seeker in a
Yeah,
Western country.
yeah. I when I traveled to Europe in 2022 in Feb. So I was carrying this travel document, the Rwandan issued travel document, and I was able to go through the airport in Rwanda. And when I had to change the flight, was in Amsterdam, this very big airport. So I was there, and then I presented my passport just to pass through, and then they were like, "Wait a second."
What is this?
So the guy was looking at my passport and looking at me. He was like, and I was like, something is wrong. Okay, let me wait and see. And I'm glad I was glad people were speaking English there. So what happened is he called somebody. He just picked up a phone. Hey, called somebody who spoke in their language, and then after a guy came and took me, and he was like, "Well, you have to wait. This is the very first time seeing this passport, so we have to check it. We have to check it. So just sit here." And I was like, "Come on, guys, it's a
What are you
passport.
checking?
It's
Yeah.
original. It's yes, I understand. It's from Rwanda. It's from Sub-Saharan Africa, and it says I'm a refugee, but I'm a person. I have a passport, and I have everything to travel. Come on, guys." That was in my head, but I was like, "Okay, fine. I'm sure nobody's going to put me in jail, at least here, and well, I will try to explain my situation if something is wrong." So
Yeah.
a guy went in the room, checked the passport, and then he came back in like 5 minutes. Then he said, "Oh, so sorry. That was the very first time to see this document, but it's
Imagine.
original. So we are very sorry. So welcome to Europe."
An
And
immigration
I was like,
officer of a country.
"Yes." He was like, "I don't know. I didn't understand." But just to tell you that we have a travel document, we are able to move around the world, but to some situations, people will stop you and think, oh, and question you. Actually, they question you, but it's in at least in my understanding is, oh, where is he coming from? Okay, what is his nationality? Okay, how
All
is
that.
he? How is he here? Actually, how did he end up here?
How can a
But
refugee be here?
yes, that was my suspicion. Was like, okay, they are questioning my passport because
Yes.
I'm a refugee. But I bet there were other people passing through. They lined the gates, but they have to question me a little bit. Oh,
Yeah.
as a travel
Yeah.
document.
Yeah.
We are not sure if this travel document can travel to this country or this part of the world.
My friend,
And I
it's
was
actually
like,
very funny how people, how refugees have, stories which are similar over and over again,
yeah.
over and over again.
And I've seen this
Like
post on
we're
LinkedIn.
coming from a
Yeah.
perspective. Okay, please go on.
Yeah, I was saying I have seen this post on LinkedIn of this lady, and I think you commented on the post. She might have went through the same thing or the similar situation.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
She's a good friend of mine, and she's from Rwanda, and she was
Mm,
traveling to a country in America for
mm,
school.
yeah.
And that is why I said it's funny how people go through similar situations over and over again, and people keep on doing similar mistakes. And now, as she goes, facing almost similar situation like you, the immigration of a given country, an African country, to a fellow African country, couldn't let her through. You know, like these are kind of conversation which should be put to the spotlight. Like
Yeah.
she has a CTD. She has a visa which is in the CTD. And then, as an immigration officer, you make a decision of deportation.
But why?
But we're taking you back to where you came from. You can't go through this country with this passport. Like,
With
seriously?
this passport?
Seriously, I have a visa for this country. Why do you
And
think they gave me a visa with this passport? If this is not a passport that
hmm
is accepted on a global level, why do you think they gave
hmm
me a visa?
yeah.
How could these people respond to this? It's first of all, I think people to say one of the reasons behind this, it will be a less knowledge of some of the immigration officers or immigration workers about refugees right to travel or refugees documentation. But for me,
hmm
I see something bigger than that. I see, because you wouldn't tell me that your country is open for refugees and supporting them to travel if your immigration officers, if immigration workers are not familiar with a travel document, a CTD, right?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no way. There's no
No,
way.
there is no
Like
way.
if in a whole of immigration office of a given country, there is no one to actually say, oh, this is a CTD and it's allowed on a global scale. Like if they have to
hmm
confirm first of all with the country of of your destination, and also contact of the country of where you're coming from. They have to say, if I'm coming from Rwanda to Switzerland, then I'm in the middle of this journey and then this country. For them to let me through, they have to contact an immigration office in Rwanda,
In
confirming the legality of the
come on.
document and the way I got off the country, and
Yeah.
also calling Switzerland to really see if the visa that I have is really
It's
actually
valid.
issued by them, it's valid. And then you see, how could you say that that country is, respecting refugees' rights to travel and so on? Yes, we talk about countries which are not allowing refugees to have travel documents, but again, we should also be talking about countries which brings unnecessary attention to traveling refugees. I'm saying this also from a personal story. I was traveling through a country. Actually, I was coming from Europe, coming to Rwanda, and I go to a country in Europe. They're highly relying on technology, and some of I think I have to say this again. Our travel documents are not digitalized and they can't be scanned. It's very hard to scan, and
hmm
so an immigration officer could put and then red light
Yeah.
again, red light. Nobody understands what's going on.
Yeah.
Myself, I'm in a dire situation. I don't know what is going on. There's
Yeah.
a queue behind me. There's a line, a
Yeah.
very long line behind me. And in my head is like, what are these people behind me thinking of me?
Yes.
Seeing that everyone is passing my passport. So the person who received my passport is not familiar with it. They give it to another person to see if they're
Yeah.
familiar with it. And then he's
They
not
gave it to
familiar with
another
it. And then
person.
they give it to another person, and then another person, and then
Jesus
another
Christ.
person. And then you ask yourself, like, the line behind me,
Yeah.
they think I'm a terrorist. That is so that is what
Yes.
comes to your mind. They think
I'll
I'm
be
a
like,
terrorist. They think I'm traveling illegally. They
maybe you
now
are. Oh, maybe
there's
he's
no
wanted.
one.
That's why they are passing their
He's
passport to each
wanted.
other.
I mean, is this person on a wanted list? Is he an international fugitive? And probably
Yeah.
they've seen him and they want to detain him. Is he like, what is this person? And unfortunately, no one is open to even ask. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
in some
Yeah.
situation, you actually feel like, should I turn back? Should I turn back and say, guys, it's fine. I'm not a fugitive. I'm not
Yeah.
wanted. I do not have any legal, any illegal thing. My passport is not for. I'm actually facing this situation just because I'm a refugee. Like, to some point, it crosses your mind. Should I do this?
Yeah.
Should I turn
Yeah.
back and tell everyone behind me that I'm broking, that I'm consuming time for?
The time.
Because
Yeah.
I have to
Yeah.
stand there like for 30 minutes until they figure out what to do with me, right?
Come
And
on.
everyone behind me is waiting. Should I
Yeah. Yeah.
say, should I turn back like to these people
And
that I've consumed 30 minutes for and say, guys, I'm sorry, it's just the fact that I'm a refugee, that is why I'm facing this. Should I, what should I do? Like, there's a lot of things which
yeah.
is going on. Like, you don't know what to do. You are not even sure whether you're going to have someone talk to you along the way,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
now there's something fishy about you. Everyone has,
Yeah.
everyone's attention now is on you.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine now a refugee from Rwanda in a European country. Now everyone trying to figure out what is wrong with me being in Europe, what is wrong
Yeah.
with me being at that checkpoint, what is going to be next? Are they going to, what is going to be next? Is the immigration officer coming, the police officer maybe with handcuffs and
Yeah.
immediately taking him away because he's wanted or something? Like, it's a very difficult situation. And that is a challenge which comes even after you've given or you've received the basic rights, which is having
Yeah.
a travel document. Now, during your actual travels, the issue that you face, huh?
Yeah.
the issue
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
face becomes a very huge barrier as well, right? And imagine that if that young lady that we're talking about was deported in Rwanda, she would have been on a blacklist in that country. She could never get into
Definitely.
that country ever again. And
Yeah.
she could have probably missed the first session of the class at a given university. And to big universities, that could even be a big deal. Even the scholarship can be cancelled, right?
Council. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you explain that? So there's a long way to go. There's a hard job to do for advocates. There's definitely a hard job to do for governments to understand and respect the rights of refugees. And let's say that maybe for a country that has digitalized the passport for its population, how is it hard to digitalize a travel document so that refugees couldn't face this kind of situations? People ended up scanning my visa because the
Yes.
passport couldn't be
The
scanned.
passport
Yeah,
couldn't be scanned. Yeah. Look,
the passport is
Jackson.
not scanned, and now they scan the visa, and I saw it.
It's that was the same similar situation. I was there. The passport couldn't go through their system. So good enough, the person didn't pass the passport to another person. So what he did, he just picked it up the phone, and I was like, maybe I might be in trouble. I might be in trouble. But then I didn't consume other people's time, so they took me. So maybe everybody was like, "Yeah, he's wanted." I think it was the police with pistol and everything. I was like, I might be in trouble.
Ah,
But then
ah,
it took like 5-10 minutes, and then I passed through. So look, it's you're having this issue because you are a refugee. Obviously, your passport is not digitalized, it's not in the global system. I don't know if there exists one. So they have to check your visa at least to see, okay, maybe this passport is not valid, is not a right passport. But let's check the visa if it's valid. If the visa is okay, maybe the passport will be fine. It's almost the same. They usually give nowadays. I know a friend of mine. He got a visa, not in the travel document, but on a paper.
ah,
He had the travel document. They couldn't put the visa in the travel document, despite the fact that he has submitted the travel document, but they put a visa on a different paper. Look, to say, well, this piece of passport, it's more or less the same as this paper. So we opted to put a visa on this blank paper, A4 format paper, piece of paper. And I was like, well, fine. Which means when he passed through the immigration office or the airports, he will have to show two things. Look, I have a passport. Maybe I'm
and I have
allowed
a
to
visa.
move, but also I have a visa on this paper. So, which means maybe my passport is questionable or is in
Yeah.
question, but don't mind, you can check my visa and see if it's fine, and then I pass
Ah,
through.
again,
Look,
it's the
those, yeah,
unnecessary attention.
it's the unnecessary attention. But why? It's the same thing you talked about before. Nobody's thinking about you. People planning to digitize their
The
population, their
populations,
citizens'
exactly.
passport or data. So we don't care. Keep it on paper until maybe when we finish with our responsibility, maybe we'll try to check with the favors. I call them favors, I would say.
It's actually
But it's
favors,
very
yeah.
unfortunate for sure, Jackson. There's still a lot of work to be done, and I'm glad we are talking about this today. Maybe somebody will listen to this and see, oh, I didn't know this. Yeah, it really exists, and maybe it will land to someone who is responsible for that and try to empathize with refugees in most of the time in other part of the world, not in a western part of the world. So hopefully something will be done in the future. We have been talking for over 100 minutes or something. I wanted to end this conversation on one thing.
Yeah.
You co-authored an article in Times Higher Education, and one of the points you guys talked about was a collective effort to help or support refugees, and also you talked about the mental health part of the support of refugees. What do you actually mean a collective support, a collective effort to support refugees? Actually,
So what I mean is that when it comes to supporting refugees or to creating a better world for refugees or creating an inclusive world for refugees, creating a better environment, better situations for refugees. There is no single organization, there is no single person, there is no individual who can champion this. But a collective effort, like it's that statement says, so everyone of the international community, international organizations need to put as maximum effort as they can to help refugees. Because otherwise, if we all say They are going to be supported. They are going to be supported by UNHCR. They are going to be supported by UN agencies. Then we'll never ever reach this world where refugees are included or where refugees have opportunities that they all deserve. It's like calling upon. It doesn't really matter. Actually, people say that I don't have an organization or an NGO. How can I support a refugee? Supporting a refugee comes down to one-on-one sponsorship, to personalized support. Help someone to get access to education. Then you've contributed to the cause of creating a better world for refugees. Do not wait for to make a direct connection with a refugee. Make a donation to a given organization that is supporting refugees. Support support people. Support. Sorry, there's a phone call coming. Contribute as you can. So everyone need to come together, because I'm specialized in education, but I'm not supposed to, I'm not a clinical psychologist, right? So
Yep. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
clinical psychologist could be thinking like, what could be my contribution in creating the psychosocial support for refugees, right? Then someone who's specialized in education, a university like Thousand New Hampshire University, which sat down and said, we need to make a given percentage, or initiating programs in Africa in refugee settings, which are supposed to be helping refugees to have access to higher education. That is their law in their respective sector. But you, in your sector, what is your role on a global scale,
What's
or
your
as a global
role?
citizen? What is your role to support refugees? So the corrective effort is, responsibilities could go beyond the host countries. It should go beyond United Nations agencies, but goes to even the population of the world, to making sure that they're supporting as they can in their respective capacities, to make sure that they're supporting refugees. They're creating a world which is really better, which is inclusive, which is conducive for refugees. You don't
Mm, mm,
have
mm.
you don't have to be you don't have to be financially stable to support a refugee. Even accepting a refugee, supporting a refugee, if you are someone from
Yeah.
a host country, support accepting a refugee as a person in your country, and making sure, understanding that they can have similar services as you have as an individual, then you've contributed. That is the
A
corrective
lot.
effort that I'm talking about. That is a
A lot,
collective
actually.
effort that I'm talking about. Everyone should be willing to do something in their respective capacities, in their respective sectors, and they should be all determined to create a safe space, a better world for refugees in general.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Because there is no one thinking about us. There is no parliament. There is no president of refugees, let's say. In a sense, he having a responsibility to make sure my present is fine, but also thinking about my future. So we rely on international support, actually. So it's a it's a very unfortunate situation where people are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Jackson, thank you so much for calling leaders all over the world to create opportunities for refugees. Somebody might be a president of a university, might advocate for a program to include refugees. Somebody
Yes.
might be a leader, a corporate leader, to start an internship program for refugees. Somebody might
Absolutely.
be an educator. He can create a program for refugees. Anybody can support. And thank you so much for calling everybody for to support refugees, because no one is thinking about our future. So we have to rely on the other people's support and international support. So thank you
And
so
we
much.
have to
You
say,
said,
and we even have to say that refugees can actually create a better life for themselves. All they need is the exposure, is a chance to do that. Just giving
yeah.
them a chance to do that, to exercise their capacities, then they create something that you can never expect.
For sure, we work really, really hard. So you said
Absolutely.
for refugees, security is just the beginning. True empowerment lies in providing inclusive opportunities for education, community integration, and economic participation. That's very true, Jackson. And thank you so much. I think this is the best way to end the conversation. I
Thank you so
really
much.
enjoyed the conversation, and thank you so much. I hope
Thank
you will be happy to join me again when I call you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I never get tired talk about refugee issues until there is no refugees in the world and who's having a bad life, a bad day. Thank you so much. It
Oh
was a
my God.
pleasure to be here, and
Yep.
I can't wait for your next call.
Thank you so much. Have a nice one, man.
Bye.
Bye.